All right, good morning and welcome to Moving Well. Thanks for being here. I just want to remind you before we start that this is not your ordinary exercise class, and that the movements that we do are designed to give information to our brain. Our movement, we know, is how we communicate with our brain, and when we give messages to our brain in turn returns and organizes how we move, how we think, how we feel. So there's a lot more going on in those brains than we previously knew. Today I chose a lesson that, since today is going to be the last day before summertime now, the last class, and we will resume again in September, I chose a lesson that I thought would be a great one for you to be able to do at home. It's one we have done. It's called the pelvic clock lesson, and there are numerous variations on the pelvic clock lesson. So we've done some one time in this class, but this is it's one that even I fall back on frequently. If I need to do a quick reorganize me, I'll lay down on the floor and do some of the pelvic clock lessons. So, and they'll be easy for you to remember. And I just wanted you to go into the summertime equipped and not just dropped. So, okay. Are there any questions or comments on last week's lesson? If you remember that far back.
Was it a good one there?
Yeah.
Was I here sometime?
Yes, we had quite a large class that day. So, all right. Well, go ahead and lay on your back. Let's get started. And a reminder that you want to move slow, pay attention, that we want to incorporate the 9 essentials, which Anat Benyel has identified as the main way to communicate with your brain. And just to review those as you're kind of settling in and tuning into yourself, it means moving with attention. That means just giving it your attention, paying attention to what you sense and what you feel. Move a slow way down in your movements. When we move fast, we can only do our habits. So in order to give our brain fresh information, we need to move slowly. And we want to give variation. In other words, introduce some variation, some playfulness, and try moving a different way just for curiosity. If curiosity is a powerful tool, the brain loves curiosity. And if you think about it, if there's something that you're really curious about, and it really gets your attention, and you really tune into it, well, that's how our brain is when we get curious. You want to reduce the force. Don't ever stretch or pull or force a movement. If a movement is you're finding resistance, then what you want to do is you want to slow down, pause, take a breath, and then proceed slower, paying attention to what you sense and feel. And you may be surprised that just having done that little bit can make a difference in how you're doing that move. Keep your goals flexible, and what that means is don't be bent on acquiring a certain position. If there's resistance, be willing to just embrace the steps and the missteps, and just be willing to reroute. And in that little exploration type time, it gives your brain all kinds of information. And imagining is always a powerful tool. If there's any movement that's difficult or any movement that's painful, slow down and just plain imagine the move. And when we imagine, our brain actually gets busy starting to organize us for that move. So now, just begin to tune into yourself. Boy, I apologize for my voice today. Feel the way your heels are resting on the floor. Your ankles, your lower legs, your knees. Is there space behind your knees? Your upper legs, your thighs, your right on the right and on the left. Your hip joints. Your pelvis. You feel your sacrum, the flat bone in the middle there. Notice what part of your sacrum you're resting on. Is it the upper part, the lower part? Are you heavier on one side of it than the other? Can you sense where your tailbone is? At the lower end of your sacrum? And then bring your attention up to your low back, your lumbar spine. Notice if there's space behind your back there. Then moving up through the middle of your back, up between your shoulder blades, to C7, that large vertebra at the base of your neck, and then on up through your neck into your head. Feel the weight of your head. Notice the leaning point of your head. What part of your head are you resting on? Is it right smack dab in the middle of the back of your head, or is it off to one side, more towards the top of your head, or down towards your neck? Just notice where it is right now, and you can compare at the end of the lesson. Also be aware of how much support you have under your head now, and then look at the end of the lesson and see if the amount of support that you need has changed. Feel the way your two shoulder blades are resting on the floor, the right shoulder blade, the left shoulder blade. Scan down your right upper arm to your elbow to your wrist, and right on through your palm and your fingers. And then do the same thing on the left side. Feel your left shoulder blade, your left upper arm to your elbow, from your elbow to your wrist, and again through your palm, your fingers and thumb. Take a moment to notice the distance from your body that your right hand is and your left hand. Are the distances similar, or is there a difference? And just notice the direction that your palm faces. Does your palm face towards your body, towards the floor, towards the ceiling? And how much of your palm actually rests on the floor? And now take a few moments just to focus on your breathing. Where do you feel the expansion when you inhale? Do you feel it moving your ribs side to side or front to back? Or do you just feel the breath going deep into your torso? Or maybe it doesn't go so deep. Just notice how it is for you right now. And then go ahead and bend your knees and stand your feet. get a sense of how stable do your feet and knees feel in the standing position. Does this feel like a pretty comfortable position for your feet that you could stay in for a period of time? How much effort is required in your legs to keep them standing? Did the contact of your pelvis on the floor change when you bent your knees? Okay, now begin to roll your pelvis up in the direction of your waist. So that means your tailbone will lift a little from the floor and the pressure will increase on your sacrum up in the direction of your waist. And just do that move up towards your waist and then let your pelvis come back to neutral. Repeat that a few times. So how do you do this? Is all the action happening in your pelvis? Or do you press on your feet at all? How do you use yourself to roll your pelvis in this fashion? And be sure, each time that you roll your pelvis up towards your waist and come back to neutral, you pause, you take a breath. And then just let that go, lengthen your legs and rest again. Even though you've done just a few moves, just take time to notice did just those few little moves change anything. And then go ahead and bend your knees again, stand your feet. And now this time, roll your pelvis in the opposite direction so that the pressure increases down towards your tailbone. Which way is easier? Was it easier to roll up towards your waist, or is it easier to roll down towards your tailbone? And remember, do the move just in the range of ease. Resist that urge to roll in that range of ease and then do a little oomph beyond that. Resist that urge. And now just combine those two moves. Roll your pelvis up towards your waist and then roll it down towards your tailbone. And notice, what do you use to make that move happen? use your abdominal muscles in any way? Or do you press on your feet? Pause for a moment and just play for a moment by pressing on your feet, thinking of the force going from your heels through your lower leg to your knee, from your knee to your hip joints, to roll your pelvis up towards your waist. And then let it come down towards your tailbone. And then let that go, lengthen your legs and rest. And again, notice, did anything change just from having done that much? If so, where do you feel the change? Now, begin playing with your right leg. Start by scooping your right foot. In other words, doing a little scooping motion with your foot. Yeah, that's right. You're kind of curl your toes a little and the sole of your foot turns towards the other foot. So play with that. Notice what happens when you scoop your foot that way. What happens up your leg? What happens in your knee? I'm going to just come and just with my hand, just kind of guide this little scoop a little bit this way. You feel that? Yeah. What that does to your knee? Play with that for a moment. So just go ahead, scoop, feel what that does to your knee, your leg, and then kind of relax your foot, and then scoop it again. No, gentle. Scoop it. Just scoop it. See what it does to your knee? You feel that?
Sure.
And again. Just gently scoop. You feel how that turns your knee out a little bit? And now, continue to play with that, but as you scoop your foot like that and it turns your knee to the outside, begin to pull your knee out, up and out to the side a little bit, and then slide it back down. So we're going to begin to organize your hip joints for this movement, with this movement. So you just, okay, bring your legs long. And now just gently scoop your right foot. You're still with your right foot. Scoop it. Your toes kind of curl so that and then as your knee goes to the outside again, let it draw your foot up. But let your foot relax once you are drawing your foot up. You can bring it up to the side a little bit. So, okay, instead of working your way up, let your knee bend a little bit and then bring your foot back down. We're going to do it in increments, small increments. So bend it a little to the side and then bring it down. And when you bring it down, let everything relax. And then do it again. And each time, allow your knee to pull your foot up a little bit further. And then slide it back down. Just in doing this movement, you're beginning to organize your hip joint in a little different way. We're just kind of lubing the hip joint a little bit. Now bring your right foot down and let it rest. And just notice, do you feel a difference between the right side and the left side? Yes? No? Now do the same thing with your left foot. Just start with scooping the foot a little bit. And then you just gently scoop it down. And when it's scooped, then bring your knee to the outside a little bit. And then bring it back down. And once you've scooped your foot, let it stay scooped and relax. And just bring the knee up to the side. And of course, if there's ever any discomfort, you find another way to do it. Okay. Now just let that go and rest for a moment. And now gently scoop your right foot and bend your right knee and gradually bring your knee to standing. Did that feel different than how you were bending your knee before? Just notice. Now do the same thing with your left foot. Scoop it a little bit, draw your knee to the outside. And if you need to play with that one a little bit before you bring it all the way up, go ahead and do that. Now notice, does it feel any different with your knees bent and standing than it did when you first chose this position? Okay, now begin to gently roll your pelvis up in the direction of your waist and then down towards your tailbone. Gently, gently. And notice, what do you do with your breathing when you do this? Do you inhale or you exhale? Remember, just go in the range of ease. So it may be a real small movement to start with. In this move, your pelvis is moving around your hip joints. Now notice, are you pressing on your feet? Try doing that. Try letting your belly relax. Just press on your feet, feeling the force go from your feet to your knees to your hip joints, and see if that rolls your pelvis up a little bit. And then let it come back to neutral. Again, what are you doing with your belly? When does your belly come in? When does your belly move out? Part of having powerful abdominal muscles, which we've always heard that we need, is that we're able to use the muscles to bring our belly in and use the muscles to push our belly out. To be healthy and functioning, our abdominals need to be able to do both. Unfortunately, our previous learning kept most of it us with chronically sucked in bellies. Okay, now let that go, lengthen your legs and rest for a moment. Notice anything you notice. And then now use your newfound method to bring your knees to stand again. And now this time, roll your pelvis right and left. Roll your pelvis over towards your left hip joint and then over towards your right hip joint. What do you use to roll your pelvis side to side?
Muscles that I don't use very often.
Or use in that fashion, right? Okay, now there's more than one way to roll your pelvis. One way is to simply tilt your knees right and left. So everybody do that and feel that. So you just tilt your knees a little right and a little left. That rolls your pelvis side to side, right? Okay. That's a totally legitimate way to roll your pelvis, but it's not the way we're going to do it today. We're going to do it. Okay. So now, gently press on your right foot, thinking of your knee going straight forward as if it was going to go over your toes. And feel what that does. And then do the same thing with your left leg. Push your left knee straight forward. And if you were to let your belly help you with this move, what would you do? So the knees stay up towards the ceiling and they just move forward. You feel what this does in your hip joints. Pardon?
I found a new pain.
Okay, is it still hurting as you do that?
It just aches. It's the whole thing still. Maybe it'll work it out, I hope.
No. Okay, stay within a really small range. The move doesn't have to be huge. In fact, it could be so small that I couldn't even tell that you're moving. And you'd be having a profound effect. In fact, more of an effect than you do moving and being in pain. So can you make the move so subtle?
No.
Yeah.
Here, did you see it?
Okay, try imagining that move a few times. Can you make it so subtle that you don't have pain? And even if imagining is what you have to go to, let it do that, because as you're imagining it, your brain is getting busy organizing and rearranging things in there. As you're doing this, how far up your spine can you feel the rotation?
All the way to my elbows.
To that height, I wouldn't think. Or are you saying it goes all through the movement, actually goes to your elbows?
I can feel difference in pressure on my elbows when I'm doing this.
Okay.
And I feel like I'm moving maybe 2 or 3 millimeters.
Mm-hmm. As we become more and aware of our connectedness, we will sense and feel so much more and begin to find out how much of a committee we have or a team we have. Okay, and then let that go. Just lengthen your legs and rest. Notice the impact of doing that little bit of moving. And now, to make the lesson easy for me to teach, I want you to imagine that you're laying on the face of a clock, and that 12 o'clock is up by your waist, 6 o'clock is down by your tailbone, and 3 o'clock is by your left hip joint, and 9 o'clock is by your right hip joint. And so, in your imagination, see yourself actually paint those numbers or magic marker those numbers or any way you want to create your visual clock there. Go ahead and do that. Put those numbers on. And then go ahead and bend your knees, stand your feet again. Find that position hip width apart or so where they feel stable and it doesn't take a lot of effort to keep them standing. And then begin to very gently roll your pelvis down to 6 o'clock and then slowly back up to 12 o'clock. Notice when you inhale and when you exhale. How far up your spine do you feel the movement now? Without trying to make anything happen, just notice. And as you're gently doing that move, scan yourself and see where do you sense the repercussion of this movement. Do you feel it in your rib cage? Do you feel it in your shoulder blades? Do you feel it? And then let that go, lengthen your legs and rest. And just for interest, draw a diagonal line from your right shoulder to your left pelvis, your left hip joint area, and from your left shoulder to your right hip joint. Notice where those two lines cross each other, and notice where they cross your spine. Make a mental note of that. And then go ahead and slowly bend your knees again, stand your feet. And now begin to roll your pelvis right and left again. So you're going 9 o'clock and 3 o'clock. And do it in the way that your knees stay standing Free the belly. Notice those diagonal lines in the background. How far through your skeleton do you feel this move? As you roll your pelvis to the right, what do you feel in your right shoulder blade, your left shoulder blade? And as you roll your pelvis in the other direction, notice what you feel along those diagonal lines. Is it easier to go in one direction or the other? And then just let that go. Lengthen your legs and rest. While you're resting now, go ahead and put the rest of the numbers on your clock. Paint them. Pick your favorite color. And when you've completed that, go ahead and bend your knees, stand your feet again. I'm always curious about the size that people make their clock. Can you show me with your hands about how big around your clock is? Okay, all right. Okay, so now, did you paint the rest of the numbers on your clock? Okay, all right. So now, begin by rolling your pelvis up to 12 o'clock, and then rolling your pelvis around to 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock. And then back up to 3 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 1 o'clock. Pause a moment and just roll your pelvis all the way around the clock once. Roll up to 12 o'clock and then go all the way around all the numbers. And just one hint, if there are spots that are difficult to get to, then the key is to effort less. In other words, so you kind of take a breath, back up, take another breath, and then proceed slower. lengthen your legs and rest. You know how that is for you now. And then bend your knees again, stand your feet. This time, roll your pelvis up to 12 o'clock and go 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, and then back up 2 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 12 o'clock. And then add one number, this time go to 4 o'clock and back up. And in the background, notice if there's tension, any place you could let go of, like your jaw, your neck, your hands, your toes. And just continue adding a number until you get down to 6 o'clock. And then work your way back up. And when you've made it all the way to 6 o'clock and back up a couple times, then lengthen your legs and rest. Notice your breathing, your contact with the floor. And then bend your knees again, stand your feet. This time, roll your pelvis up to 12 o'clock and go counterclockwise. Go 12 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 9 o'clock, and then back up. 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock. Do that quadrant a few times. And after you've done that quadrant a few times, start adding one number at a time. So go from 9 o'clock to 8 o'clock, and back up. And at your own pace, continue to add one number until you're down to 6 o'clock. How far up your spine do you feel the force moving?
Enough to move my head.
which means the force has made it through your entire spine all the way to your head.
Yeah.
Our goal is connection. And once you've made the trek all the way from 12 o'clock counterclockwise down to 6 o'clock and back up, go ahead and lengthen your legs. Okay, now roll to your side and come to sit. And sit with the soles of your feet together and leaning on your hands behind you. You can, lean back as far as you want to on your hands, wherever is comfortable. Now in this position, now it's like you're sitting on the clock, so you want to roll your pelvis forward and back. 12 o'clock is behind you, 6 o'clock is ahead of your pubic bone. And if it's difficult to sit in this position, if there's strain on your wrists or if there's strain any place, do a few moves and then rest. If it hurts too much to lean on your wrists, go back and lean on your elbows and forearms. It's an in-between position, which has its own issues. And in this position, roll your pelvis 12 o'clock and 6 o'clock. And notice how far through your spine do you feel this move. Got a cramp? Yeah, okay, just stop and rest. Let yourself lay down and rest. Yeah, yes. Cramps are not uncommon. And we start using ourselves in different ways than we're accustomed to. And then let that go. Lay on your back and rest. What's changing? What's different? What do you feel? And then again, roll to your side, come up, lean on your elbows and forearms behind you, put the soles of your feet together, and your elbows and forearms behind you, if you can. And in this position, roll your pelvis 6 o'clock and 12 o'clock.
I'm feeling
Do it more gentle.
no, just a pop, like, popping your knuckles.
Yeah, sometimes you'll hear that. That's not uncommon. And then let it go, lay down and rest. See, that's also a challenging position until we get the force going through our spine so that our head is positioned differently. And it will be that you'd be able to lean on your elbows and forearms and your head would still be towards the ceiling instead of having to go back. That comes with time.
So all of ours were going back?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Which is not uncommon. Mine did too when I started. So, take time to feel any differences. And then again, come up on your elbows and forearms with your soles of your feet together. Now this time, roll your pelvis 9 o'clock and 3 o'clock. Okay, so tilting the knees side to side is one way of rolling your pelvis. The other way is to think of your belly pushing towards one thigh and then the other. And you get a little different movement around the hip joints.
A little different?
Yeah. And just do a few moves and then stop and rest. When you're... Was that painful?
No, just different.
Very different.
No, just
Yeah.
different kind of feeling, just startling different kind of thing.
Yeah.
Huh.
But not painful.
No.
Okay. Okay, and then everybody leave it alone. Lay on your back and rest. Freeing these hip joints. It's a vital piece. Vital piece for healthy hip functioning. Okay, now come up on your elbows and forearms. Put the soles of your feet together. And roll your pelvis 6 o'clock and 12 o'clock a couple times. And then roll your pelvis 9 o'clock and 3 o'clock. Are you breathing? Do you inhale, exhale? How far up your spine do you feel this movement? And then just let it go, lay on your back and rest. The ribs start waking up. Is anything changing in your breathing? This is a lot of action in the rib cage. When it comes to having back issues, it's usually neck issues and low back issues that people complain of. And the causing culprit is very often, very, very often, probably most of the time, is that our rib cage and our spine are not moving. So getting that section of your spine to move and getting your rib cage moving takes the strain off your neck and your low back. So now roll to your side, come up to sit, lean on your hands behind you. Put the soles of your feet together. And in this position, roll your pelvis 12 o'clock and 6 o'clock. Notice, do you get a sense of force going through your spine? When you roll to 6 o'clock, do you get a little taller? You go to 12 o'clock, do you get a little shorter? And then switch and roll your pelvis 9 o'clock and 3 o'clock. Again, is your belly available to help you? And then let it go, lay on your back and rest. noticing any change in your breathing, your contact with the floor. Bend your knees. Feel taller. Well, that means some chronic muscular holding has let go. You're not scrunched.
Everything that was in my back has eased up.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yay.
Good for you.
Yep. That chronic compression of the spine, letting go. Okay. Now, bend your knees, stand your feet. And now, roll your pelvis up to 12 o'clock and begin going around the clock, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, and take your time, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock. And go all the way around the clock. Yeah, breathing is good. Set the intention to be aware of how often you hold your breath. Not only in class, but outside of class when you're doing your daily thing. Very often when we're focused on something, we're holding our breath as well. So as you're rolling your pelvis around the clock now, just kind of in the background, notice, do you have a sensation of clocks elsewhere in your body? Or any other part of you rolling? And when I mean rolling, I mean the sense of pressure increasing between you and the floor. And other parts of yourself.
I think I'm balancing with my shoulder blades or shoulders in general.
Like you're engaging muscles to hold yourself there?
Yeah.
Oh, what if you let that go? What would happen?
I'd fall into a little ball.
You become a noodle.
It's on your plate.
So, yeah.
The image.
It's great to notice those places that we're holding. One of my clients always called it holding it sacred, not letting it move. And in this work, you'll consistently, most likely, find that you do have some sacred spaces that you hold here. Now go the other direction. Reverse the direction that you're rolling around the clock. All right, thank you for being here. This is the last class for this season. We'll see you in September. Hope you can watch us again.